Nothing says happy marriage quite like your wife announcing new rules for your relationship at her own birthday party. I'm Mark Stevens, 40 years old, selling overpriced suburban dreams for a living, and apparently I've been demoted from husband to household decoration somewhere between the appetizers and the main course. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. There are new rules awaiting my husband now, Laura declared to her gaggle of admirers, raising her wine glass like she was toasting the fall of Rome. The living room of our McMansion erupted in giggles and applause. Ellen, Laura's perpetual sidekick, clapped so hard I thought her fake nails might snap off. I stood in the corner, nursing my third bourbon and watching my wife of 12 years perform for an audience that included half our neighborhood, her entire social circle. Alex Morrison, personal trainer to the desperate and divorced, with his spray tan and his red Porsche parked like a middle-aged crisis right in my driveway. At least the drinks are free, I muttered to myself, taking another sip while Laura basked in the attention. She wore that little black dress I'd bought her for Christmas, the one that cost more than most people's rent. Funny how it looked different on her now, less like a gift from a loving husband, more like a costume for whatever show she was putting on. Sarah Martinez, Laura's best friend since college, caught my eye from across the room. She'd been giving me sympathetic looks all evening, which should have been my first warning sign. "Mark!" Ross Campbell, my old college buddy, stumbled over with a beer in each hand. "Great party, man. Really festive." He was drunk enough to be honest, which meant he was seeing the same train wreck I was. "Yeah, it's a real celebration," I replied, watching Laura lean in close to Alex as he whispered something in her ear. She threw her head back and laughed, that fake, performative laugh she'd perfected for social media. The party continued around me like I was a ghost haunting my own house. Laura's friends gossiped in clusters, their voices carrying just enough for me to catch fragments. "Laura says Mark's boring in bed," from Ellen's corner. "Alex is such a beast," from another group near the kitchen. "She deserves better," floating from the patio. Good to know my marital status had become party entertainment. I was about to retreat to my home office when Laura grabbed the microphone from the sound system. Yes, we had a sound system for a birthday party. Laura believed in going big or going home, preferably both simultaneously. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice slightly slurred from wine. "This year has been transformative. I've learned so much about myself, about what I want, about what I deserve." Alex nodded approvingly from his position near the bar. I noticed he'd positioned himself perfectly in Laura's line of sight, like he was directing this whole performance. "I've realized that life is too short to settle for comfortable, too short to accept good enough, too short to follow old rules that don't serve us anymore." The crowd murmured agreement. Someone shouted, "You go, girl," which made me want to throw my bourbon glass through the window. "So here's to new beginnings," Laura continued, raising her glass toward Alex. "To new adventures. To new possibilities." The subtext was about as subtle as a brick through a window. I watched my wife publicly humiliate me in my own home, and something inside me snapped. Not into rage, that would come later. This was something colder, more calculating. I stepped forward and began clapping slowly. The room turned to look at me, surprised that the decorative husband had suddenly come to life. "Beautiful speech, honey," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet room. "Really moving. You meant to say, your new husband, though, didn't you?" Laura's face went white. "Mark, what are you—" "I'm announcing our divorce," I said simply, still clapping. "Since we're making public declarations tonight, I figured I should join the fun. Laura wants new rules. Here's mine. I'm done playing by the old ones." The silence was deafening. Ellen's mouth hung open like a broken mailbox. Alex looked like someone had just told him his Porsche was being repossessed. I walked over to Sarah, who was staring at me with something that might have been admiration. "Care to dance?" I asked, extending my hand. She took it without hesitation. As we moved to the center of the room, I could feel every eye on us. Laura started to say something, but I wasn't listening anymore. The social bomb had been dropped. Now it was time to see who survived the blast. 20 minutes later, after most of the guests had fled like rats from a sinking ship, I found myself alone in the kitchen. Laura had locked herself in the bedroom with Ellen and 2 other friends, probably planning my social execution. Alex had disappeared entirely, which showed exactly the kind of man he was when things got complicated. That's when I saw it. Laura's phone, abandoned on the kitchen counter, in her hasty retreat. The screen was still lit, showing a text conversation that made my bourbon taste like battery acid. Alex: "Can't wait to have you all to myself after tonight." Laura: "Soon, baby. Mark won't know what hit him." Alex: "The look on his face when you made that speech. Priceless." Laura: "Just the beginning. Wait until you see what I have planned for him." I screenshot the entire conversation and sent it to myself. Then I scrolled up and found weeks of messages, explicit photos, detailed plans for their future together, discussions about how to get me out of the house and away from their money. My money. The house I'd bought with commissions from selling dreams to other couples who probably thought they'd last forever. I poured myself another bourbon and sat down at the kitchen island, scrolling through months of betrayal documented in emoji and poorly spelled sexts. Laura had been planning this for a long time. The public humiliation wasn't spontaneous, it was choreographed. But here's the thing about being underestimated. People tend to assume you'll just roll over and take it. They forget that the quiet guy in the corner might be quiet for a reason, might be watching, might be learning, might be planning. I raised my glass to the empty kitchen and smiled for the first time all evening. "If you want to burn down your life, bring gasoline to the party," I said aloud. I brought matches. The next morning brought the kind of hangover that felt appropriate for a man whose life had imploded in his own living room. I woke up on the couch. Laura had changed the locks on the bedroom door, which was both petty and impressive in its speed of execution. Sarah showed up at 8 a.m. with coffee and bagels, looking like she'd slept about as well as I had. "You look like hell," she said, setting the coffee on the kitchen counter where I'd discovered Laura's phone the night before. "Feel worse," I replied, accepting the caffeine like a man accepting last rites. "Thanks for staying last night, and for the dance. Someone had to have your back." She sat down across from me, her expression serious. "Mark, there's stuff you need to know. About Laura, about Alex, about what they've been planning." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. "You mean this stuff?" Sarah's eyes widened as she scrolled through the messages. "Jesus, Mark, this is... wow. But it's not everything." Over the next hour, Sarah laid out a conspiracy that would have impressed the CIA. Laura's girls' nights had been covers for hotel meetups with Alex. The mysterious expenses on our credit cards weren't spa treatments. They were romantic dinners and weekend getaways. Ellen wasn't just an enabler, she was an active participant, providing alibis and cover stories. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Months," Sarah admitted, looking guilty. "I tried to hint at it, but you seemed happy. Or at least, you seemed like you didn't want to know." She was right. I'd been willfully blind, choosing comfort over truth. But that was yesterday's Mark. Today's Mark was developing a taste for reality, no matter how bitter. "There's more," Sarah continued. "They're not just planning to leave you. They're planning to destroy you first. Laura's been documenting everything, claiming you're emotionally abusive, financially controlling, maybe even unstable. She's building a case to take everything and make you look like the villain. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. She's that calculated? She's been talking to Ellen about it for weeks. How to make you look bad, how to get sympathy, how to keep the house and the money while painting herself as the victim. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the suburban paradise I'd worked 12 years to build. Laura's red BMW was gone from the driveway, but Alex's Porsche was parked 2 houses down, subtle as a neon sign. "So, what do we do?" I asked. Sarah smiled, and for the first time I saw something predatory in her expression. "We give them exactly what they deserve." The first phase of our counterattack was reconnaissance. While Laura was at work, assuming she still had a job after last night's performance, Sarah and I went through the house systematically. We found receipts for hotels I'd never been to, credit card statements for a secret account Laura had opened, and a journal where she'd been documenting our fights for the past 6 months. Fights that had never happened. Arguments I'd never started. Abusive behavior I'd never exhibited. "She's been creating a paper trail," Sarah observed, reading Laura's creative writing. "Look at this. Mark screamed at me again today for buying groceries. His controlling behavior is getting worse." I remembered that day. I'd asked Laura why she'd spent $300 at Whole Foods for a week's worth of groceries. She'd laughed and said she'd gone a little overboard with the organic stuff. We'd ordered pizza and watched Netflix. "She's rewriting history," I said, "and documenting the rewrite. Smart if you're planning to screw someone in divorce court." I was beginning to understand the scope of Laura's ambition. This wasn't just an affair. It was a hostile takeover of my entire life. That afternoon, I decided to have a conversation with Alex. I found him at his gym, FlexFit, which catered to the kind of people who thought fitness was a personality trait. He was training a woman who looked like she'd had more work done than a classic car restoration project. "Alex," I called out as he finished demonstrating some ridiculous exercise involving rubber bands and false confidence. He turned, and I saw the exact moment he recognized me. His spray-tanned face went through several expressions before settling on fake concern. "Mark, hey man, how are you doing? Last night was intense." "Yeah, it was educational," I replied, walking closer. "Learned a lot about new rules and new possibilities." "Look, I hope there's no hard feelings." "Hard feelings?" I interrupted. "Why would there be hard feelings? What's to be upset about?" Alex's client had stopped pretending to exercise and was now openly eavesdropping. I didn't mind the audience. "I think you're misunderstanding the situation," Alex said, trying to sound reasonable. "Am I? Help me understand it then. Explain the situation where you're parking your midlife crisis mobile 2 houses down from mine while my wife talks about new rules." "I don't know what you think you saw." "I saw my wife's text messages, Alex. All of them. The photos, the plans, the discussions about what you're going to do to me. So let's skip the part where you pretend this is a misunderstanding." Alex's fake concern evaporated, replaced by something uglier. "Look, Mark, Laura's not happy. She hasn't been happy for years. Maybe instead of blaming me, you should ask yourself why your wife needs to find satisfaction somewhere else." I nodded thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right. I should have seen this coming. Should have recognized the signs. Should have prepared better." "Exactly. Sometimes these things just should have installed security cameras months ago. Should have hired a private investigator. Should have documented everything." I smiled. "But don't worry. I'm a quick learner." The color drained from Alex's face. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means there are consequences for your actions, Alex, and you're about to learn what mine are." I left him standing there, his client staring at him with new interest. By the time I reached my car, I could hear him trying to explain the situation to her. She didn't look convinced. That evening, Sarah and I put Phase 2 into action. While Laura was at another girls' night, which we now knew was a hotel room with Alex, we implemented what Sarah called the shrimp special. "This is juvenile," I said as we approached Alex's Porsche with a bag of raw shrimp from the grocery store. Juvenile but effective, Sarah replied, popping the hood with a tool she'd borrowed from her mechanic brother. Trust me, this is going to be beautiful. We carefully placed the shrimp in various hard-to-reach places throughout the engine compartment and air conditioning system. Nothing that would damage the car. I wasn't interested in vandalism charges, but enough to create an unforgettable olfactory experience. How long before it really kicks in? I asked. In this heat? Give it 2 days, 3 at most. We also left a small amount of sugar in his gas tank, not enough to cause real damage, despite urban legends, but enough to make the engine run rough and require expensive diagnostics. Phase 2 complete, Sarah announced as we walked back to my house. Ready for Phase 3? What's Phase 3? We wait for Alex to lose his mind and then we record it. 2 days later, Sarah's prediction proved accurate. I was having lunch at a cafe across from FlexFit when Alex's Porsche pulled into the parking lot, windows down, music blaring. Even from a distance, I could see him grimacing. I had my phone ready when he got out of the car and immediately started retching. The smell of rotting shrimp in 90-degree weather was apparently as devastating as Sarah had promised. Alex spent the next 10 minutes screaming at his car, kicking the tires and calling someone, probably a mechanic, while gym members gathered to watch the show. I recorded the entire meltdown and posted it to a private social media group with the caption, "When your midlife crisis starts to stink." The video got 47 likes and 16 shares within an hour. That night, Laura came home furious. "Did you do something to Alex's car?" "Why would I do something to Alex's car?" I asked innocently. "I don't even know where Alex parks his car. He thinks you sabotaged it. It smells horrible and won't run properly." "That's terrible. Maybe he should be more careful about where he parks. You never know what kind of neighborhood predators might be lurking around." Laura stared at me suspiciously. "You're different. New rules, remember? I'm adapting." She stormed upstairs, probably to call Alex and strategize their next move. I poured myself a bourbon and checked my phone. The video of Alex's meltdown had been shared to 3 more groups and was approaching viral status in our social circle. I was starting to understand why people said revenge was a dish best served cold, though in Alex's case, it was more like a dish best served with rotting seafood. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You don't know the half of it. Meet me at the Red Lantern tonight if you want the truth." I showed the message to Sarah. She frowned. "That's either very good news or very bad news." "Only one way to find out," I replied, grabbing my keys. Turns out the rabbit hole was lined with dirty secrets and secondhand lipstick. I couldn't help but follow. The Red Lantern was the kind of dive bar where people went to forget their problems or create new ones. Dark, smoky despite the no-smoking laws, and populated by the kind of clientele that minded their own business. Perfect for clandestine meetings and questionable life choices. I found my mysterious contact at a corner booth, a woman in her 30s with bleached blonde hair and the kind of makeup that suggested she'd been crying recently. She waved me over with red-painted nails that had seen better days. "You're Mark?" she asked as I sat down. "Depends who's asking." "I'm Jessie, Alex's ex-girlfriend." "Well, one of them." She took a long drink from what looked like her 3rd or 4th beer. "I saw your little video of his car meltdown. Hilarious. Glad you enjoyed it." "Oh, I did. Almost as much as I'm going to enjoy watching his world burn down." She leaned forward, her eyes bright with alcohol and malice. "Alex Morrison is a lying, cheating, steroid-abusing piece of shit, and I have proof." Over the next hour, Jessie painted a picture of Alex that made my wife's affair look like a minor character flaw. He'd been running a side business, selling performance-enhancing drugs to his clients. He'd been sleeping with at least 3 married women simultaneously, including Laura. And he'd been skimming money from the gym's accounts to fund his lifestyle. "But here's the really good part," Jessie continued, pulling out her phone. "He's been recording his conquests. Video, audio, photos, everything. He thinks it makes him some kind of stud, but really it just makes him a criminal." she showed me a video that made my stomach turn. Alex and Laura in what looked like a hotel room, doing things that would have been private if my wife hadn't married a narcissist with a recording fetish. There are dozens of these, Jessie said. Different women, different locations, all married, all wealthy, all being blackmailed. Blackmailed? How do you think Alex affords that Porsche? The designer clothes, the expensive dinners? He's been bleeding these women dry, threatening to send the videos to their husbands if they don't pay up. I felt the world shift around me. Laura's been paying him? 20,000 so far, according to his books, which I may have accidentally copied before he changed his passwords. She slid a flash drive across the table. Everything's on there. Videos, financial records, client lists, drug transactions, the whole criminal enterprise. I stared at the drive like it was a loaded gun. Why are you giving this to me? Because Alex destroyed my life and now I want to destroy his. Your wife was just collateral damage, but she made her choice. Jessie finished her beer and stood up. Use it wisely, and when you burn him down, make sure it's public. After Jessie left, I sat in the Red Lantern for another hour, nursing a whiskey and processing what I'd learned. Laura wasn't just cheating, she was being blackmailed. Alex wasn't just a personal trainer, he was a criminal. And I wasn't just a cuckolded husband. I was collateral damage in a much larger scheme. I called Sarah and asked her to meet me at home. When she arrived, I showed her everything Jessie had given me. Holy shit, Mark. This is huge. It gets worse, I said, scrolling through Alex's financial records. Look at this client list. Half the women in Laura's social circle are on here. Ellen, Patricia Morrison, Susan Chen, all of them. All of them paying Alex? All of them being blackmailed by Alex. He's been running a systematic operation, targeting wealthy married women through the gym. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Mark, I need to tell you something. About why I'm helping you. I looked up from the laptop. What do you mean? I haven't been completely honest about my motivations. She took a deep breath. Laura asked me to help her. Months ago, when she first started planning this whole thing, she wanted me to be her alibi, her cover story, her character witness when she destroyed you in court. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You've been working with her? At first, yes. She convinced me you were controlling, abusive, that she needed help escaping a bad marriage. I believed her because I trusted her. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. But then I started watching you, really watching, and I realized she was lying about everything. So you switched sides? I switched to the truth. Laura isn't a victim, Mark. She's a predator, just like Alex. And when I tried to back out, she threatened to destroy my reputation too. I stood up and walked to the window, trying to process this latest betrayal. My wife had tried to turn my friends against me. She'd manipulated people I cared about. She'd weaponized my own social circle. There's more, Sarah continued. The plan isn't just to divorce you. They want to get you fired, ruin your reputation, maybe even have you committed for psychological evaluation. Laura's been researching involuntary commitment laws. I turned back to her. She wants to have me institutionalized? It's the perfect plan, from her perspective. You disappear, she gets everything, and Alex gets a wealthy widow to bankroll his lifestyle. I sat back down and looked at the flash drive Jessie had given me. Then we'd better make sure their plan doesn't work. The next day was Laura's biggest professional event of the year, the annual charity gala for the Children's Hospital. As the lead event planner, she'd been working on it for months. It was her chance to showcase her skills to the city's elite, network with potential clients, and cement her reputation as the go-to person for high-end events. It was also the perfect venue for a very public downfall. Sarah and I spent the morning preparing what she called the tribute video. Using footage from Alex's collection and Laura's own social media posts, we created a montage that told the story of their affair without showing anything explicitly pornographic. Set to music, with timestamps and location data, It was a masterpiece of public humiliation. "This is going to destroy her," Sarah said, as we finished the final edit. "Good," I replied. "She was planning to destroy me." The gala was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, with 500 guests, including the mayor, several city council members, and most of the social elite Laura had spent years cultivating. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a laptop and a projector remote. Laura looked stunning in a gold evening gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was in her element, directing staff, greeting VIPs, and basking in the attention. Alex was there too, playing the role of supportive friend, though I noticed he stayed carefully away from the married women on his client list. During the silent auction, I made my move. I'd bribed the AV technician with $500 to give me access to the projection system. As Laura took the stage to give her annual speech about the importance of supporting children's health care, I loaded my video and waited for the right moment. "This year has been particularly meaningful to me," Laura was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I've learned so much about myself, about what really matters, about the importance of authentic relationships." I hit play. The first image was a screenshot of Laura's text messages with Alex. The audience murmured, confused. Then came photos of them together at various hotels and restaurants, time-stamped and geotagged. The murmurs turned to gasps. Laura spun around to look at the screen behind her just as a video of her and Alex began playing. Nothing explicit, but clearly intimate, clearly not her husband. "Turn it off!" she screamed at the AV booth. "Turn it off right now!" But the technician had been paid to let it run, and run it did. 5 minutes of Laura's secret life played out in high definition, while 500 of the city's most influential people watched in stunned silence. Laura's boss, Margaret Chen, stood up from her table. "Laura, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." The crowd erupted in chaos. Some people were filming with their phones. Others were heading for the exits. Laura stood on stage, her face red with humiliation and rage, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. That's when Alex made his grand entrance. He stormed onto the stage, apparently deciding that physical intimidation was his best option. "You son of a jerk!" he yelled, charging toward me. I'd been expecting this. I stepped aside at the last moment, and Alex's momentum carried him straight into the dessert table. He went down hard, taking 3 tiers of cake and several floral arrangements with him. The crash was spectacular, and at least 20 people caught it on video. Security moved in to restrain Alex, who was now covered in chocolate cake and screaming threats at me, while Laura tried to help him up. The scene was so ridiculous that some people actually started laughing. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, taking the microphone Laura had abandoned. "I apologize for the interruption. Sometimes the truth has poor timing. Please, continue enjoying your evening and supporting this worthy cause." I left the stage to scattered applause and walked calmly out of the ballroom, leaving Laura and Alex to deal with the wreckage of their public humiliation. By the time I got home, the videos were already going viral on social media. Cakegate was trending locally, and someone had created a meme using Alex's face covered in chocolate frosting. Sarah was waiting for me with a bottle of champagne. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I'm just getting started," I replied. My phone rang. It was Detective Heller, Laura's friend from the police department. "Mark Stevens? This is Detective Heller. I need you to come down to the station for questioning." "About what?" "Harassment, stalking, possibly revenge porn, depending on what was in that video." I smiled. "I'll be right there, Detective, and I'll bring my lawyer." "You can't arrest a man for telling the truth, Detective," I said, before hanging up. "Not yet. If you want to see how deep the rot goes, start peeling back the wallpaper. Just watch out for what crawls out." Detective Heller was exactly what I'd expected. A middle-aged cop with a receding hairline and the kind of mustache that suggested he'd peaked in the 80s. He sat across from me in the interrogation room, trying to look intimidating, while my lawyer, Janet Morrison, no relation to Alex, thankfully, reviewed the complaint Laura had filed. Your wife says you've been stalking her, Mr. Stevens, harassing her boyfriend, destroying private property. My wife says a lot of things, I replied calmly. Most of them aren't true. What about the video you showed at the charity gala? That looked pretty real. Janet looked up from her papers. Detective, what specific crime are you alleging my client committed? Showing evidence of adultery isn't illegal. Neither is revealing the truth about someone's character. Revenge porn requires explicit sexual content, which wasn't present in the video. Public humiliation isn't a crime, detective. If it were, half the internet would be in prison. Heller's face reddened. What about the car? Alex Morrison says someone sabotaged his vehicle. Can he prove it? Does he have witnesses, physical evidence, or just suspicions? Janet smiled. Because suspicion isn't enough for charges, as you well know. I leaned forward. Detective, has anyone filed a complaint about Alex Morrison, about his business practices, his relationship with married clients? That's not relevant. I think it is, especially when those clients include the wives of city council members, prominent businessmen, and at least one judge's wife, all of whom appear to be paying him substantial amounts of money for reasons that have nothing to do with fitness training. I slid a folder across the table. Financial records, detective, all legally obtained, all showing a pattern of what looks suspiciously like blackmail. Heller opened the folder and his expression changed. Where did you get this? From a concerned citizen who wanted to see justice done. The same citizen who provided evidence that Mr. Morrison has been selling controlled substances to his clients. Janet stood up. Detective, unless you're planning to charge my client with something specific, we're leaving. And I suggest you start investigating the real criminals instead of harassing the victims. We walked out of the police station into bright afternoon sunlight. I felt lighter than I had in months. That went well, Janet said, getting into her car. But be careful, Mark. Laura's going to escalate. People like her don't go down quietly. She was right. Over the next week, Laura launched a social media campaign designed to paint me as an abusive husband who'd snapped and was now stalking her and her friend. She posted carefully edited photos that made her look fragile and vulnerable, wrote long Facebook posts about emotional abuse and controlling behavior, and rallied her remaining friends to support her narrative. The problem was, her remaining friends were rapidly disappearing. Ellen was the first to abandon ship. After the gala video revealed that she'd been one of Alex's blackmail victims, she wanted nothing to do with Laura or the scandal. Patricia Morrison and Susan Chen followed quickly, both apparently deciding that their reputations were more important than their loyalty to Laura. The blogger who'd been covering our drama, a snarky woman named Rita Walsh who ran a local gossip site called City Secrets, was having a field day with the story. Her latest post, titled, "When Yoga Pants Attack, The Rise and Fall of a Suburban Queen," had been shared over 1,000 times. But Laura wasn't finished. If anything, her isolation made her more desperate and dangerous. I came home from work on Thursday to find my house ransacked. Not burglarized, nothing was missing, but searched. Drawers pulled out, papers scattered, furniture moved. Someone had been looking for something specific. I called the police. But when they arrived, the responding officer was Detective Heller. He took one look around and shrugged. "Probably kids," he said. "You should get better locks." Kids who didn't steal anything? Kids who only went through my office and bedroom? Maybe they got spooked. Heller's tone suggested he didn't care. "File an insurance claim." After he left, Sarah came over to help me clean up. We were putting papers back in my desk when she found something that shouldn't have been there. A small digital recorder, still running. "Laura was here," I said, examining the device. "She was trying to record me saying something incriminating." "Or planting evidence," Sarah suggested. "What if she'd hidden drugs, or weapons, or something that would make you look dangerous?" I thought about Janet's warning. Laura was escalating, and she was getting sloppy. Desperate people made mistakes, but they also made dangerous choices. That night, I installed a security system throughout the house. Cameras, motion detectors, automatic alerts to my phone, the works. If Laura wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I had evidence of every move she made. I didn't have to wait long. At 3 a.m. on Saturday, my phone buzzed with a security alert. Someone was in my backyard, moving toward the house. I checked the camera feed and saw two figures in dark clothing approaching the back door. I called 911, then grabbed the baseball bat I'd started keeping by my bed. But instead of waiting for the police, I decided to give Laura and Alex a surprise. I turned on every exterior light in the house simultaneously, flooding the backyard with brightness. Then I activated the sprinkler system, soaking the intruders who were trying to pick my back door lock. The camera caught everything. Laura and Alex, dressed like amateur burglars, getting drenched and blinded while trying to break into my house. Laura slipped on the wet grass and fell face first into a flower bed. Alex tried to help her up and tripped over a garden hose. By the time the police arrived, not Detective Heller this time, thankfully, Laura and Alex were soaked, muddy, and caught red-handed attempting to break into my house. "They're trying to frame me," Laura screamed as the officers handcuffed her. "He's abusive. He's dangerous." "Ma'am, you're the one who was breaking into his house," Officer Martinez pointed out reasonably. "I have a right to be here. I'm his wife." "You're his estranged wife who doesn't live here anymore and was caught on camera committing breaking and entering," the officer replied. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." The video of Laura's arrest went viral within hours. Someone had posted the security footage online, and our flower bed faceplant became the new trending hashtag. Rita Walsh's blog post about the incident, titled "Suburban Bonnie and Clyde, When Yoga Moms Go Bad," crashed her website from too much traffic. But Laura had one more card to play. On Monday morning, I woke up to find my front yard decorated with signs, "Child abuser lives here," and "Protect our kids from Mark Stevens." Someone had also spray-painted "pervert" on my garage door and scattered flyers around the neighborhood with my photo and claims that I was a danger to children. I knew it was Laura's work, but I couldn't prove it. The damage was done. Neighbors were staring, parents were crossing the street with their kids, and someone had already called my real estate office to complain. That's when Sarah had a brilliant idea. "Remember Laura's journal?" she said, pulling out the notebook we'd found during our search of the house. "The one where she documented all those fake fights?" "Yeah, what about it?" "She wrote everything down, Mark. Every lie, every manipulation, every false accusation. It's all in her handwriting, with dates and details, including her plan to accuse you of being inappropriate with children." I looked at the journal entry Sarah was pointing to. Plan B, if the abuse angle doesn't work, suggest inappropriate behavior with minors. Mark coaches Little League. Perfect opportunity to plant doubt. Anonymous tips to parents, social media campaign, maybe police report. "She planned this months ago," I said, feeling sick. "Which means we can prove it was premeditated defamation. Janet's going to love this." That afternoon, I held a press conference in my front yard. With Janet by my side and a crowd of neighbors and reporters watching, I read excerpts from Laura's journal, showing how she'd planned to falsely accuse me of crimes I'd never committed. "This is what real abuse looks like," I said, holding up the journal. "Systematic manipulation, calculated destruction of someone's reputation, premeditated attempts to destroy an innocent person's life." I also announced that I was suing Laura and Alex for defamation, harassment, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming, and Janet was confident we'd win. Laura's response was swift and desperate. That evening, she showed up at my house with a moving truck, claiming she had a right to retrieve her belongings. When I pointed out that she'd been arrested for breaking and entering just days before, she called the police. Detective Heller arrived and, predictably, took Laura's side. "She has a right to her personal property," he said. "She has a right to schedule a supervised visit through her lawyer," Janet replied, having arrived within minutes of my call. "She doesn't have a right to show up with a moving truck and demand access to a house she doesn't own. It's marital property. It's property owned solely by my client, purchased before the marriage with his own money. Ms. Stevens has no legal claim to the house or its contents." While Janet and Heller argued, Laura tried to sneak around to the backyard. I followed her, camera ready, and caught her trying to dig up something she'd buried near the garden shed. "Looking for something?" I asked. Laura spun around, dirt on her hands and panic in her eyes. I dropped an earring back here last week." "Last week when you were arrested for breaking and entering?" She'd been trying to retrieve a bag of pills, steroids from the look of them, that she'd probably planted to frame me. But now, with cameras rolling and witnesses present, she was caught red-handed with controlled substances on my property. The police had no choice but to arrest her again. As Laura was led away in handcuffs for the second time in a week, she screamed at me, "This isn't over, Mark. You think you've won, but I'll destroy you. I'll take everything." "You already tried," I called back. "How'd that work out for you?" The crowd of neighbors who'd gathered to watch the spectacle actually applauded. Rita Walsh, who'd shown up with a camera crew, was live streaming the whole thing to her blog's audience. Laura's social execution was complete. She'd lost her job, her friends, her reputation, and now her freedom. Alex had disappeared entirely after his arrest, probably trying to avoid the federal drug charges that were coming his way. But I wasn't done yet. Laura had promised to destroy me, and I believed her. Desperate people, with nothing left to lose, were capable of anything. I was right to be worried. Nothing says new rules like calling animal control on your ex-wife. I always did hate that dog anyway. The call came at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. My lawyer, Janet, sounded tired but grimly satisfied. "Mark, we got her. Laura's been indicted on 14 counts including conspiracy, defamation, drug possession, and attempted blackmail. The DA found evidence she was working with Alex to extort money from at least 6 other women." I sat up in bed, instantly awake. "What about Alex?" "Federal custody. Turns out his little operation caught the attention of the DEA. He's looking at serious prison time." I should have felt victorious, but something in Janet's tone warned me there was more. "There's something else," she continued. "Laura made bail yesterday. Her family put up their house as collateral. And Mark, she's not taking this well. The police found a list in her apartment. Your name was at the top, along with addresses of your office, your friends, places you frequent. She's planning something." "I think so. Be careful. Really careful." I hung up and immediately called Sarah. "Pack a bag. You're staying here until this is over." "Mark, you're scaring me." "Good. Laura's out on bail and she's making lists. I want you somewhere I can protect you." That afternoon, I received a call. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was crying. "Mark, I'm so sorry. Someone took Buddy." Buddy was my golden retriever, the one thing from my marriage that I'd actually wanted to keep. He was old, gentle, and had never hurt anyone in his life. "What do you mean took him?" "A woman came by, said she was your wife, that there was an emergency and she needed to get Buddy to the vet. She had a leash and everything. I thought, I'm so sorry, Mark." I knew immediately it was Laura. She'd taken Buddy not because she wanted him, but because she knew it would hurt me. The dog was leverage, bait, or worse, a way to get me to meet her somewhere private. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura's number. "Want to see your dog again? Come alone to the old Morrison warehouse on 5th Street. 1 hour. Come with anyone else and you'll never see Buddy again." Sarah read the message over my shoulder. "It's a trap." Of course it's a trap, but she has my dog. So we call the police. And tell them what? That my estranged wife, who's out on bail, asked to meet me? They'll say it's a civil matter. Sarah grabbed my arm. Mark, she's desperate. She's facing prison. She has nothing left to lose. Which is exactly why I have to go. I spent the next 30 minutes preparing. I strapped a small camera to my shirt, activated the GPS tracking on my phone, and left detailed instructions for Sarah about what to do if I didn't come back. Then I drove to the warehouse district, a part of town that had been dying a slow death since the factories closed. The Morrison warehouse was a massive brick building that had been abandoned for years. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, and weeds growing through cracks in the parking lot. It was the perfect place for a final confrontation. I found Laura's car parked behind the building. My BMW was there too. She'd apparently stolen it from my driveway. I could hear Buddy barking from inside the warehouse. The front door was chained shut, but a side entrance had been forced open. I stepped inside and immediately understood why Laura had chosen this place. The warehouse was enormous, filled with shadows and hiding places, with multiple exits and plenty of room for things to go wrong. "Laura!" I called out. "I'm here! Let the dog go!" Her voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness. "Come to the center of the warehouse, Mark, and keep your hands where I can see them." I walked deeper into the building, following Buddy's barking. The main floor was mostly empty except for some old machinery and stacks of rotting pallets. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, creating pools of light in the gloom. I found Laura in the center of the space, sitting on a folding chair with Buddy tied to a post beside her. She looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair unwashed. She was wearing the same clothes she'd been arrested in days earlier. "You look like hell," I said, stopping about 20 feet away. "Thanks to you." Her voice was hoarse, bitter. "You destroyed my life, Mark. My job, my friends, my future, all gone because you couldn't handle the truth about our marriage." "The truth? You mean the part where you were cheating, stealing, and planning to have me committed?" "I was trying to be free," she screamed, and I saw something wild in her eyes. "Free from your boring life, your boring house, your boring everything. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who has no passion, no excitement, no fire? So you decided to burn everything down instead of just asking for a divorce." Laura laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A divorce wouldn't have been enough. I needed you to pay for wasting 12 years of my life." I noticed she was holding something in her right hand, a gun, small but definitely real. "Laura, put the gun down. This doesn't have to end badly." "It already ended badly." She stood up, the weapon shaking in her grip. "I'm facing prison because of you. My family disowned me. I have nothing left." "You have your life. You can start over." "With what?" "I'm a convicted felon facing federal charges. No one will hire me. No one will date me. I'm a social pariah because you had to get your revenge." "I didn't make you cheat. I didn't make you steal. I didn't make you try to frame me for crimes I didn't commit." "You made me desperate!" Buddy was whimpering, pulling at his rope. I could see he was scared, but unharmed. Laura might be many things, but she wasn't cruel to animals. "Let Buddy go, Laura. He didn't do anything to you. He's the only thing you actually care about, the only way to make you feel what I've been feeling. You want me to feel loss, betrayal, humiliation, mission accomplished. You've put me through hell for months. Not enough." She raised the gun, pointing it at me. "Not nearly enough." That's when I heard the sirens. Laura's head snapped toward the sound, her eyes wide with panic. "You called the police?" "I didn't have to. Sarah did, the moment I didn't check in." Multiple police cars were pulling into the parking lot, their lights flashing through the broken windows. Laura spun around, looking for escape routes, but the building was already surrounded. "Drop the weapon!" a voice called through a megaphone. "This is the police! Drop the weapon and come out with your hands up!" Laura turned back to me, the gun now pointed at the ground. "This is your fault, all of it." "No, Laura. This is your choice. Everything that's happened is because of choices you made." She looked at Buddy, then at me, then at the gun in her hand. For a moment, I thought she might turn it on herself. Instead, she threw it across the warehouse floor and collapsed back into the chair, sobbing. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "I was supposed to be happy." The police entered the warehouse with tactical precision, surrounding Laura and securing the weapon. She didn't resist as they handcuffed her. She just sat there crying while I untied Buddy and held him close. Detective Heller was among the officers, looking embarrassed and avoiding eye contact. A different detective, a woman named Rodriguez, took my statement. "She's looking at serious time," Rodriguez told me as the paramedics checked Laura for injuries. "Federal drug charges, conspiracy, kidnapping, armed threats. The DA's going to throw the book at her." "What about Alex?" "Already pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He's cooperating with the investigation into the blackmail ring. Turns out your wife and her boyfriend were part of something much bigger." I watched as they loaded Laura into a police car. She looked small and broken, nothing like the confident woman who'd announced her new rules at a birthday party that felt like a lifetime ago. "Mr. Stevens?" Detective Rodriguez handed me a business card. "You might want to consider a restraining order. And maybe some security for your home. This kind of thing. Sometimes it doesn't end with an arrest." But it did end. Laura was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Alex got 12. The other women in their blackmail scheme testified against them in exchange for immunity. Ellen moved to another state. Detective Heller was quietly transferred to a different department after an internal investigation revealed his inappropriate involvement in the case. I kept the house, kept my job, and kept my dignity. Sarah and I started dating officially, though we took it slow. Both of us had learned the hard way what happened when you rushed into things. 6 months later, I was cleaning out the last of Laura's belongings when I found her journal from prison. Someone had smuggled it out and mailed it to me anonymously. The final entry was dated just a week earlier. Mark won. I have to admit it. He played the game better than I did. I thought I was so smart, so calculating, but I underestimated him. I saw a quiet, boring man who would roll over and take whatever I dished out. Instead, I found someone who was quiet because he was watching. Someone who was boring because he was planning. Someone who understood that the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting even. I hate him for it. But I respect him for it too. New rules indeed. I closed the journal and threw it in the trash.